Anda sedang menyaksikan rakaman khas Agenda Awani. Assalamualaikum. Dan hari ini, malam ini saya akan membincangkan tentang sesuatu yang nampaknya abstrak. Tapi bagaimana kita nak menggunakan reka bentuk, kreativiti, inovasi, alam, kehidupan dan realiti dalam pembangunan bandar. Because of that, I would like to speak in English because I have a very prominent Australian architect, Shane Thompson. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you.
I've listened to your presentation at the conference to find out how Johor Bahru can be a world city. But I guess you gave the example of one project that you and your company is working on, of the super city in Shenzhen. And the moment I look at it, I was thinking it, and then straight away you were saying it about the paddy and the paddy stock. And I think I said that in my opening of my moderating session, where I said I came from this smallest state in the northernmost part of the peninsula of Malaysia called Perlis, and it's paddy field all over. So I could really identify, looking at the way the design of the three towers in the supposed idea of super city. But I guess if we can take a step back, because I would like to relate to the audience, some of them might remember, there was this episode a few years ago where I had a session with Moshe Safdie, the world-renowned architect of Marina Bay Sand, and we were discussing Marina Bay Sand, but we started out by talking almost like the pop group, Earth, Wind and Fire, and that was how he started to explain the concept of Marina Bay's design. So with you, when I heard about the rise and the elements, so sometimes people look at architecture and the issue of the modern city and they get lost in that. But great architects like you start with concepts. So can you please put to us the concept and the thinking behind the concept of the super city of China, how it wants to be different, how it wants to stay true to its root while developing and moving forward, and maybe the lessons you think Johor Bahru can learn from it?
Well, I think there are many parallels between Shenzhen and Johor Bahru. Both have ambitions to be taken much more seriously on the world stage. Shenzhen already is arguably a world city, but it suffers from being, if you like, a little brother to Hong Kong, yes, Beijing and Shanghai in particular. So it really wants to make its mark. And at the moment, the project that I've been working on is specifically for a new city centre, which is planned and a very easy place to get around and a very easy place for people to recognise, unlike where the Shenzhen Business Centre is at the moment. But they believe that it's very important for them to have a city that's recognised. If I mention Shenzhen to you now, or anyone who's been there, you can't really visualise the city. So having something that's very symbolic is important to them. So for people to have an image of that city, and I think any great city, it's often an outcome rather than an intent, will have that character. There's an image that pops into your mind when I speak of London or Paris or New York, and even KL now, particularly with Petronas Towers, yes, is a very recognisable place. Sometimes that happens by accident, sometimes it happens on purpose. Yeah. Now, I think in this instance, I think the best architecture and the most memorable buildings can be understood at a very, very, very simple level, but at the same time are also very sophisticated. And for us, in developing a group of 3 towers, one of which was 165 stories tall, okay, how do you create a new architecture, a new type of tower that is recognisable the world over, that's so simple that you can just draw it in 3 strokes of the pen, but at the same time actually has meaning to the community that owns this. And I think what I've discovered in my work in Asia is that there is a belief in a lot of people's, there's a mythology and a history, and there's a sense of who we are by what we eat how we talk, the space between each other when we talk. There are things which are meaningful to our culture which are different and not necessarily meaningful to other cultures. And when we were thinking about that for China, we found it difficult to think of anything that was more meaningful than rice. And I think for us, the humble rice stalk, which is ubiquitous throughout the countryside, is both a symbol of the humility and the hard work that's built the modern China. And so to elevate it and to abstract it to something which is still recognisable, I think has genuine meaning for the Chinese people, and they are happy to look at those buildings and be able to describe them as the rice stalks. Not dissimilar, I think, to what we saw during the Beijing Olympics, when with affection people referred to their stadium as the bird's nest, or the water cube as the swimming pool as the water cube. Interestingly, in both instances there, the bird's nest was designed by Swiss architects and the water cube was designed by Australian architects. But I think, as you described the experience from Moshe Safdie at Marina Bay Sands, and I saw him speak there last year, sometimes those simple, elegant solutions where the ideas are distilled down to a very essence, which can be easily understood by the man in the street who's never thought about architecture before, but there's something that touches his soul. There's a pride that they get from being able to understand this huge, sophisticated structure, and it just makes sense to them at that level.
The chief executive of Iskandar, Malaysia, Dato', in the last session when I was moderating it, said, sometimes we overdo it. It's not that we don't want trees. We do it when we do it and put it completely out of context that people don't feel it. The same thing was being argued in Singapore, maybe more by Malaysians who frequent Singapore rather than Singaporeans themselves, that why do you need somebody from outside to design an iconic news center for your environment? How would they be able to embody what we just discussed? Because maybe they are feeling it from the outside, unlike us, who might see it differently from where we come from. So maybe that's a challenge for multinational and global talents like you, where you have your base, but you're actually a global citizen. Some people think that that's the make of a global city, but the conflict that it creates internally is because the locals would say, would they really imbue how we feel? But because we were born here, we live it, so we know it. But it's like if I go to Australia and I feel it as a tourist, will be very different from how I would be as an indigenous person there, for example.
Absolutely.
So how do you cross that divide when it comes to that?
Well, I don't think you necessarily need people from other places. I just think regardless of where people come from, there are some people, and perhaps I can do that sometimes, but there are some people who have a particular talent of collaborating or working collectively with the local community. And often it's about making that community feel less self-conscious about who they are.
Okay.
And as you and I probably both know, it's often the strangers to our place who point out to us what's really interesting about our place. Okay. Those things that we might drive past every day, those things which are just a part of our normal daily life or part of our cultural existence, which are very different and very unique. And sometimes we need that slightly different viewpoint. Okay. And I think it's also a matter of helping people to have confidence in their own ideas. In my teaching, and I have a professorship at a university in Australia as well, in my teaching, I'm less concerned to impart knowledge rather than to develop confidence in the students' own ideas. Often I think we can be too overwhelmed by our learned knowledge, particularly when we're working in these very sophisticated fields, because there is a huge amount of literature that we have to study to get and undertake the positions that we're in. Okay. And it's very intimidating to design and plan cities. And I think things get complicated because people get they get fearful of making a mistake. And so they take too much advice. You will try to get maximum support that you can, and that often means making a compromise, when sometimes the idea is right in front of you, and sometimes you just need someone to help you to focus on what's really important.
I'd like to go a bit deeper into the super city and the three towers, because maybe traditionally we've been neglecting what we can do in the spaces above us.
Yes.
And at the same time, you are actually controlled by the environment already built, so you have to work within what you have. And I remember this with Marina Bay Sands also, because it's the last addition to the whole area. So how do you think of places and people when you don't have a clean slate? Because it might be tougher. Let's go for the first break, but once we are back, maybe you can share that experience with us right after this. I don't get to talk to world-class architects often, but after Moshi stuff did a few years ago, now I have Shane Thompson right in front of me. And we're just referring to how, when we're talking about Johor Bahru as a world-class city or world city, Shane presented the super city of Shenzhen and the three towers that you're looking at right now in the project that you're involved in. But we've talked about the soul, the local elements, but sometimes my editors like to call and refer to me as an oxymoron, because I said, I want it to be hard, but I want it to be soft too. And I remember in your presentation, you said, it's global, but it's local at the same time. But that's not necessarily an adversarial state of being, but it can be a complementary state of being. So if you can help elaborate on that by giving specific example, like utilization of space and the engineering side of the towers.
Well, I think one of the great opportunities here in this part of the world, and by that I mean in Southeast Asia and in the subcontinent in India, obviously Indonesia and China, is that there is a tradition of craft, and there's a tradition of decoration. And of course Malaysia, being a Muslim country, has a very different approach to its craft and its decoration and its art than say a place like China and India again. And what I think it's really important is that you don't see the places that you make as different from those traditions. So I think the challenge is to appreciate this, and this art comes from centuries of traditions. These are very important, and imbued in the figurative nature of that work are triggers for the human mind. They're shapes and forms that have meaning for you as a community, as a culture, religiously, ethnically, and socially. And I think that we stand on the threshold of an age where we're no longer ruled by the vertical and the horizontal line. And so I think you stand on the cusp of being able to build buildings, very large buildings, which are much more imaginative, much more able to harness the power of your culture into the form making. And so, and at the same time, there are new technologies emerging about how we can build buildings, where we can make them have less impact on the environment by their use. They can use materials which have less embodied energy in the creation of them, and they are more robust to being retrofitted for future use later on. We also know now how to build gardens in the sky. So there are many lessons, I think, that we can take from the Western tradition. And the tower is, the office tower and the skyscraper is an American invention, we might generally say. But it's an American invention from the early 20th century and the mid-20th century. I think, and as you are probably aware of, there will be more towers built in Asia than anywhere else. And I think because of the issues of housing so many people in such dense areas, you now realise, and you know, and you should learn from the mistakes of the West, that urban sprawl is not the solution. So to get the right balance for you, that works for you culturally, because the way that this community likes to join together, and what scale of gathering they have, is different to another place. But if you combine that kind of, that cultural sense of scale, that cultural sense of community that's particular to this place, combined with the traditional cultural ways of making art and making built works, whether they be art or buildings, and you combine that with new technologies, then this part of the world, the skyscrapers, can become a new typology for Asia. I think Asia we will get the most inventive and the most wonderful ways of living in these bigger buildings out of what's going to happen in this part of the world than we will from the Western tradition. And I'm very hoping that you can learn from our lessons. The manufacturing capability of this part of the world is without match. So anything is possible.
So let's spill some secrets about the super city after this.
Yes.
I'd like to know more about the garden in the sky. Maybe it's 15 stories high. Usually we have the topmost part and that's it. Plant some trees, put some palm trees, save space for the helicopter to land, and that's it. But the functional aspect is what I'm very interested in the concept that you have been presenting, because not only do you have to learn what are they going to use it for, you have to make them feel like it's natural for them to use it. So let's discuss that after this last break. I always like to go back to that interview I had with Moshe Safdie and Marina Bay Sands, because this part of Southeast Asia has never seen any construction like we had at Marina Bay Sands. So I went there 6 times in 2 months just to look at every aspect of it. I remember the first time they were saying that it's not a casino, it's just 0.33% acreage of the whole integrated development. But then, again, you can see the wisdom of that particular reasoning. But you can also see that it resembles Singapore, because sometimes Singapore, they don't really know who they are, where they stand. Are you a Malay? If I take ethnicity composition, they have Malay, Chinese, and of course Indians. But you don't really see that with Marina Bay Sands. So it's not coming from that ethnic cultural perspective. But Moshe Safdie went into the elements of the land and the sea, because it's a bay, so that's opening up to the ocean, there's the bay to look at, and also there's a piece of land. So he wanted to integrate something that combined those 2 elements. But it took me half an hour to really understand Marina Bay Sands from the design part. And you've just described to me the super city and the 3 towers. And what I'm trying to allude to is, yes, we have to make it simple for people to understand, but most of all, for people who will be going through and using the design, it's got to mean something for them. Then you have synergy, and then you have sustainability, because they will make the best of what you have hoped for the design to offer. So can you give a specific example? Like if I take the Garden of the Sky out from your design, how would the people later on, when it's completed, really feel that this is for me and I must use it?
Well, at the end of the day, what these buildings provide is a workplace. This is an office building. And these are designed for the workplace of the future. There is now, for the first time, significant research on how the quality of the workplace and how you define the quality of the workplace that contributes to a greater efficiency and a greater contribution to teamwork within that community.
Okay, sorry to interject, but in Asia we're so big about this issue of work-life balance. I know it's being discussed, especially also in the West, but in Asia it has an added impetus because the family structure and support group is very, very important.
Yes. Well, you know, the workplace is like another community. And I personally, and I'm an architect, so there is no work-life balance.
That's me and you both.
But the research, and particularly by Professor Frank Becker from Cornell University, who's done groundbreaking work in this area, has shown that good access to natural light, a view of the sky and trees, just trees that sway in the wind, and a place where you don't feel like you're working in a corridor, and some kind of equity between the work that you do and the space that you work in, creates a wonderful spirit in the worker, and that has benefits for the employer. The employees stay longer. The employers don't have to worry about replacing those people, which always comes at cost. You get a happy employees, which means you get more productive employees. There's a whole range of measurables in this sense. So, but that ability also to get to the outside, to get to fresh air during the day, the ability to engage in activities incidentally or in a planned manner with or without your colleagues, whether it be beekeeping, whether it be growing some vegetables, which are used in the office, whether it's a community garden, it may even be chickens in the sky. Give real meaning to that sense of community, where the workers within that community can share things beyond simply meeting a deadline every day without seeing the sky, without access to natural light. So this is a workplace for the future, and it's not as if you can deny workers of this. The research also shows that the Gen Ys feel less loyalty to companies than before. Yes. And if you're not providing them with a good workplace, you'll lose your best people. They will walk and they'll go somewhere else. So these buildings, more than anything else, are designed to provide a terrific quality of natural light to all parts of the floor, to give all workers the access to breathe the natural fresh air, to walk out of their office, to see a tree, no matter where they are in the building, 120 stories in the air, and to feel part of a community where you can see other workers from your company on other floors. It's a very different approach to this stratified floor by floor by floor, no contact unless you bump into someone in the elevator. And you know what we're like in elevators, we're not social at all. In fact, elevators are perhaps the least social places that we've ever created. That's right.
Open the door faster.
So this is about creating communities, creating connection. The research shows that many organisations now will be more concerned about new ideas than ever before. And the best ideas come from the community of workers. And those ideas come by them talking to each other. And the best discussions happen in the corridors. They come through incidental interaction, not by formal meetings where people get together, but it's that person that you bump into on the way to the toilet, or the person that you bump into on the way to get a coffee or a cup of tea. That's where new ideas come from. And so the new workplace is designed to respond to these changing values from the newer generations.
So this is an office that I would run to rather than away from.
You would run and you would be reluctant to leave. And you would have a connection with your colleagues which would be unlike the connection that you would have with your colleagues in a normal office place. And I can tell you now, it's not a matter of choice. This is happening all over the world now as we speak. So this is not a revolutionary idea.
Yes. But it is a revolutionary idea in terms of coming out with it. In that part
to make it work in buildings of this size,
cool.
Yes. And to make it work in the tropics. And this is where I think it's very important. The Westerners who have come to places like Shanghai and Shenzhen, the Western architects and the like, and have come to Malaysia and that have not really understood the tropical climate and have not really understood how glare is more of a problem.
Respect the environment will respect you.
Exactly,
Okay.
yes.
Will you be building anything soon or designing anything soon in Malaysia?
Well, I have a colleague whom I have an association with in KL,
Okay.
and I'm hopeful that we will be working on something soon. Yes.
I have booked that particular project for interview first than other media. Thank you so much. That's why
Thank
we
you.
are Astro Awani. Thank you so much, Shane. I know we've talked a lot, but I was trying to cram up everything. I think we
It's
did a
okay.
bit of justice to it.
Thank you.
Terima kasih banyak kerana telah menonton. Google saja Shane Thompson ataupun Super City Shenzhen. Anda boleh mengetahui lebih lanjut tentang perkara ini. Ia agak kompleks tapi menarik, begitu menarik sekali. Hantarkan pandangan anda sendiri kepada pelbagai platform yang ada di Astro Awani, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter dan segalanya. Dan kita jumpa lagi dalam episod yang lain pula. Saya ingin mengucapkan terima kasih kepada penganjur persidangan untuk menjadikan Johor Bahru Bandaraya Bertaraf Dunia, JB as a World City. Sekian, selamat malam, jumpa lagi. Thank you so much. Such an honor.
Thank you.